Hi there. My name is Lucas Weiss, and I'm the host of the Weesesports Quarantine Chronicles. For today's episode, I'm interviewing Rachel Halliwell. She's an OHL Network reporter who also works at Sportsnet in social media. In our conversation, we chat about what it's like to cover junior hockey, how Rachel uses social media to raise awareness about these prospects, as well as a deep dive on where the sports industry is going amidst the pandemic. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel on the bottom right hand of your screen. This is episode 6 of the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles.
Well, Rachel, you're very fascinating. It's why I wanted to bring you on the show as someone who has a lot of vast social media experience. Like I said off the top, you did social media for the York Lions, the Oshawa Generals. You're actually working at Sportsnet now. So, well, for many of us, we're either not working or struggling to find work. What's it like to have constant work and being able to work in the industry at Sportsnet?
Yeah, I mean, during these times, like it's such a blessing to be able to continue working. And, even though there are no sports, I'm still working at Sportsnet, which is really nice. It's difficult at times because obviously you're talking about a lot of different things right now. You're breaking a lot of news stories that you don't really want to hear, like different leagues being canceled, tournaments, this and that being canceled, and you have to put it out. So I mean, I'm lucky in the fact that I do get to still work and I love my job. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But obviously you missed the part of now would have been right in the heart of hockey and basketball playoffs, and MLB would have just been starting, and it would have been a really hectic time in a different way. But we're all happy to be working. We have, group chats where we talk every day at work and we're all like, hey, how's it going? Just like telling everybody we're okay. But, I'm just lucky and blessed to be still working right now.
And it must be interesting for a lot of sports places like Sportsnet to try to fill the void of no sports with content. And I've been really impressed actually by how places like Sportsnet have been able to do that by producing really unique content and filling that void of having no sports right now. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about, without giving away all the state secrets, the things that Sportsnet's doing to keep the content going?
Yeah, I mean, our team has done a phenomenal job. They've exceeded any expectations that I thought. I was not sure what, the plan was, and the team has done a great job of pulling things together. Our on-air talent that no longer are really on air because there's no live broadcast, and for now, they've done a great job of contributing to from home. There's a lot of our on-air talent that are conducting these at-home interviews with different players and different people, across sports, not just NHL, NBA, across everything. We do Hockey Central at home. David Amber interviews a couple people from the hockey world. We've just started Blue Jay Central at home, the normal Blue Jay Central gang, just at home interviewing, players, talking about things like that. We always have instant analysis when something happens. I know Arash has been talking to quite a few Olympians, tennis players, that kind of thing. And the players and athletes have been great about giving us their time too. Nobody has to. So we're really thankful that they've all been really willing to help us, and our content team has just done a great job. We're, getting access to tons of players, and our web desk, there are still stories every day of different things. So they're working really hard too to put out those stories and, deliver breaking news as it happens. And everybody's just been doing a great job.
Well, I think everyone's waiting for that day where there's a breaking news report saying hockey's back, basketball's back, baseball's back, whatever form it is. I think we'd all just be grateful to have something to talk about rather than just picking or predicting how it's going to look like. So they're definitely doing a lot of important work there. But I wanted to touch a bit about the Zoom idea and a lot of the interviews that are happening remotely, because it feels like to me that this may be here to stay, just this whole notion of doing these interviews at home, because if people can master this technology, it certainly saves money, but also it can be done in a really compelling way. So I'm just curious about your thoughts about these sort of one-on-one Zoom conversations that you and I are having right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Zoom is a great tool, given the circumstances. I also think if you're ever unable to go somewhere, you can call somebody via Zoom. I know all the interviews that I've done with the prospects for hockeyprospect.com, we've done them as Zoom calls. So it is possible to keep doing that, but I do think you do need that like in-person interaction, face-to-face. I know a lot of people really value like going to the rink and like maybe talking to somebody off the record and then talking to them on the record, and then the stuff you say off the record, kind of you like put little tidbits in when it is on the record. So I think you do still need that in-person interaction, but I think Zoom is a great way to do it if you're trying to cut travel budget, or somebody's trying to file a story and they need it ASAP. You can settle up like a little Zoom call and do that really quick, as opposed to having somebody fly, from X to Z to get an interview with that person. Zoom's a great way to do that. Zoom's also a good way to do conference calls just in general, if not everybody's in the office at the same time. Like I know for us, like half our staff work during the day and half our staff work at night. So we're not all generally in at the same time if there's meetings. So this is a good way to just talk to people, I guess. We use Zoom calls for like our family too. Like my family does Zoom calls with each other too. The only thing is my dad doesn't really know how it works. So I don't know. So he's like older, so I don't know if the older people are gonna get it, but I think we're okay with it.
Yeah, like I mean, I gotta be honest. Like the first time I used Zoom was for one of my classes. I'm currently in graduate sports journalism at Centennial right now, and I gotta admit, like it was weird at first, just be like, okay, like how is the professor gonna handle 20 students if we're all wanting to talk at once? But there's the mute button, there's the mute all options. So like actually seeing it at work and doing a weekend, I'm like, wow, like this is a really unique tool to do these sort of conference call meetings. And of course, Sportsnet has the luxury of, throwing on some really cool graphics to make it look somewhat professional as well. So yeah, like, I mean, obviously, I mean, I'm at the point now, we're almost 8 weeks into being quarantined. We yearn for human to human interaction, like, being at the hockey rink, but you never know, right? I mean, you're always thinking about what are the new trends, and Zoom certainly could be one of them.
Yeah, for sure. It could be. I just think that you can't ever really replace the in-person interaction and the in-person, interviews and stuff like that. But I think it's a good alternative.
No, for sure. Now, you mentioned being at the hockey rink, and anyone who follows you knows that you're very passionate about hockey, specifically junior hockey. I'm curious your approach as someone who's very well versed in social media to cover prospects, games in the OHL for a league that has a very niche following, but may not be well known to all hockey fans.
Yeah, like you said, it's a very niche following, but it's a big niche following. Like there are a lot of people at every game. It's almost sold out across the board, any rink you go to, especially recently at this time of year, playoff runs and everything like that. But it is a big market, and I don't know that people really realize that. But all the fans are dedicated fans, so they want information, and if you can provide them with information, they're going to follow you, and they're going to want you to post more information about it. So it's just about posting information in the right way. And like, I would never want to put anything out there that isn't accurate or true or make somebody look bad. Like I'm trying to promote the players and promote what they bring to the table as prospects, right? You're trying to inform people, what they are, who they are, what they bring, what they're good at, what their strengths are. And, any interesting facts that you can say and stuff like that. But yeah, I just think, the fan base is great. Like they absolutely are so passionate about it. It's unbelievable. So the fans to me are great. And just being able to provide people with that information that they might not get just from showing up to the rink and watching, is something that I take a lot of pride in.
And especially in these towns where OHL is the primary form of entertainment. Like I know covering the Guelph Storm and their championship run last year and seeing that community just come together and show their passion for the Storm, you just see how much this team means to them. And, you go to Kitchener, you go to London, you go to the Sioux, you go to Sudbury, like this is everything. So I think for people like yourself to be able to show your journalistic skills is really amazing, because you're really showing these kids at their earlier parts of their career before some of them become the NHL stars that we know and love today.
Yeah, and it's the fans are they're diehards, like they love it. And there's season ticket holders that have been season ticket holders for 40 plus years at probably almost every rink that you go to. You can find at least one family that's been a season ticket holder for 45 years. And they're all like that, and they're dedicated and they love it. And the players too, like I know that, sometimes junior hockey doesn't really get maybe national attention that it should. And I think we all know that, but I think it's important that the players know that people do care what you're doing, not just teams that are scouting you. Like people are trying to help you. People are trying to get your name out into the general media. People are trying to help you promote yourself, with different platforms like everybody else is. Like there are, there's reporters at every game that I've been to. There's a lot more scouts than there are reporters, but they're there. And they're there to tell stories. Like there's so many local reporters, local newspapers that are trying to pump out the stories because the locals love it. And then, people are trying to get them, put on a national scale. People are trying to get their names put out to everybody, and not just, the Quentin Byfields, the Cole Perfettis, the other guys too. You know what I mean?
No doubt, because I think, beyond the top prospects, there's also guys that, may be going, their whole career in the OHL, and that's the end of it, but they still have very good stories that need to be told. And I think it's important to provide that attention for all the prospects that are in junior hockey. Rachel, I'm curious, when you're doing social media, let's say at a game or reporting on junior hockey, and you press, a tweet, do you know whether a tweet is going to gain a lot of traction or not? Like, I'm always curious asking social media people whether they just have that sense like, dang, like this is going to really, really blow up, or, this is, okay,
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So it depends. So it's different if I'm like when I'm working for a team as opposed to me just being on my own as a reporter. It's a little different. So just for me, I guess, like when I'm reporting, when I'm just on my own independently, you sometimes have like an instinct where you're like, I think this is probably going to do well. Generally, when either if I'm the only one there, like who else is going to see it? Like I'm the only one putting out information. So you're like, this probably will do okay. If there's video content, that generally does pretty well because people like to see it as opposed to just reading it because they could put a visual to the caption. But it depends. Like if you're putting out inside information that nobody else really knows, I would expect that that's probably going to blow up just because not everybody has that information necessarily. But then, when you're working for a team, sometimes because sometimes you're like, dang, that was a good one. But then other times you're like, this may or may not blow up. And then it does. And you're like, that was weird. If that makes sense. So sometimes it's a really hard thing to kind of predict. You can to a certain extent, but sometimes you put out stuff, you're like, that was fire, and nobody likes it. And you're like, all right, never mind.
I definitely fall more into that category. Like, I consider, myself pretty active on Twitter, and I definitely tweet a lot, but like most of my tweets, I mean, they just, I think they're good, but they're like, not as popular as some other ones. Like I remember the Leafs playing the Hurricanes. This was the David Ayres game. And for those of you wondering, don't know, David Ayres, emergency goalie, comes in for the Hurricanes, beats the Leafs. And I had this tweet like lined up about 5 minutes left in the game, basically listing like the Leafs haven't won the cup since 1967. They haven't won a playoff series since 2004. They lost to an emergency goalie. They lost to the Boston Bruins. And like I click send like right when the game ends, and it blew up. Like, and it was like, it was so weird, but like, I feel like for that one, it was like, there was so many people paying attention, and like, you just hit all like the right, check marks. Like, you're going to rile up Leaf fans, check mark. You're going to rile up Boston Bruins. You're going to make Boston Bruins fans happy, check mark. So it's interesting because it's such, I admire social media people so much for their creativity and just being able to like, tweet after tweet and post after post just generate so much good content.
Yeah, well, timing is everything too, right? Like if it's super timely and super relevant, like odds are it's probably going to blow up. Like I don't know if you've seen LSU when Joe Burrow got drafted, they put out that insane video and it blew up. but you knew that was going to happen because A, their content team is fantastic. But B, it's so timely, so relevant. Like, it was perfectly put together, like everything like that. Like, if that tweet doesn't blow up, that's a failure, honestly. Because you put so much time and effort into it. You perfectly planned it. You put it out at the right time. You knew it was going to go up. So it's either like it's timing, creativity, and uniqueness. That's the kind of stuff that generally blows up. So if you find like a unique nugget in a game where, like, for example, at Sportsnet, we're watching all games at night, right? So if you can find a unique nugget in a Vegas, Arizona game that most people in Canada are not watching because they don't necessarily have access to it, it might blow up because where else are you going to see that content? You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I'm curious because now, I mean, I feel like when you started doing social media to now, like there's a lot more unique platforms. Like, for example, TikTok has now become a big platform for sports. Do you think that TikTok is sort of like what Snapchat was? Is it just a phase, or is it here to stay? Because for me, it's like, I just think it's, you know, like I remember Snapchat was the tool a few years ago. Now I barely use it. And now TikTok is sort of like what Snapchat was. So I'm sort of curious your thoughts on these new platforms and whether they can have that long-term success.
Yeah, well, I think actually TikTok reminds me a lot of Vine, actually, just but longer, obviously. But it's like the same kind of thing where you get like these random videos and you get like, you know, it's just kind of, it's a mix of everything. I love TikTok. I'm obsessed. I'll spend hours just scrolling through TikTok. I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. Oh, that's cute. Or I'm like crying at some of the TikToks. I think, you know, because when Snapchat was a thing and when Instagram was a thing, like you and I were younger, right? Like we were part of that younger generation where we were like, oh, this is so cool. It's a new social media platform. I don't think people that were 30 at the time probably thought Snapchat was as cool, much like how probably people that are older right now don't think TikTok is as cool as somebody who might be my brother's age and he's 16. Like they love it. They're obsessed. All the 16-year-olds are obsessed. So I think, you know, new social media stuff generally tends to play to younger audiences, I find, just across the board. Like when Facebook came in, every single one of my friends, we all got Facebook right away. Soon as Instagram came in, every single one of my friends got in. But the key is, I think TikTok is great, honestly. And I think it gives people a creative outlet that, because it's different than Twitter and Instagram. And I don't know if you've seen a lot of TikToks, but there are so many athletes on TikTok making great TikTok content. And I know that they have a lot of free time on their hands right now, but I think it's just a creative way for them to like express themselves and their personalities and their humor in a way that isn't so Twitter and Instagram-ish, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
No, it does. I mean, O'Shea Brissett, for example, for the Raptors and the Raptors 905 has been hilarious on the TikTok, like just doing these really unique videos.
Brendan Gallagher is killing
Brendan Gallagher, exactly. Like, I think for sports, it's like so like can definitely tap into the sort of institutionalized social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram because of like what you said. Like, I think the way Twitter became so institutionalized was because you had like these top celebrities and these athletes tweeting about their life and tweeting about like what they're doing. And now video, I think, just has better impact than words. To see these athletes and these celebrities do these funny like things, I think it can really continue to succeed and be here for longer than just a few years.
Oh yeah, and you see it all the time. Like we do it at Sportsnet where we'll repost some of the TikToks that we've seen from athletes or just people in general. People are so creative on TikTok. They're doing stuff I've never seen before. And I know, you know, quarantine, you think of all these ideas, but it's the perfect platform right now because that's all I'm looking at is TikTok. I'm scrolling constantly. I'm like, wow, that's a great idea. That's so cool. And it's not just, you know, sports videos. They have, you know, tips videos where people are like, oh, how to make a better Instagram story, how to Photoshop this in a minute, how to do this. So it's a multi-use tool, honestly. Like it's not, and you know, you can do that on Twitter too, but you only have 280 characters. You only have 60 seconds on TikTok, but you can say a lot more in 60 seconds than you can tweet in 280 characters. You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, it's true. I think after this conversation, I'm gonna download TikTok. I'm gonna go to the dark side. I feel like
You're gonna get
you've
lost in the rabbit hole. You're just gonna keep
you've
going and on and on all
you've
day.
you've convinced me. I want to get back
Yeah.
to junior hockey, and you've done a lot of great reporting with the OHL network, and I'm curious, like, who has been your favorite interview and why?
Oh gosh. I've had a few that I've really enjoyed, a few people that I've really enjoyed talking to. Um, Somebody that I enjoyed talking to who actually doesn't play in the OHL was Dawson Mercer.
Mm,
He's just a great kid. He's from a small town in Newfoundland, Bay Roberts. He's just a great kid, like just a great person to talk to. Just just loves what he does, and you can tell like it really comes across in his voice. He's a smart kid. He just loves hockey and loves to talk about hockey. Like, and it just comes across when you talk to him. So he's a great kid to talk to. Another kid that I always enjoy talking to is Cole Perfetti. I've spoken
mm.
to him a couple times. He's a really intelligent kid. He's a great person to talk to. He knows, he'll always, there's people that you talk to and they give you the answer. And then there's people that you talk to where they give you the answer and then some.
Mm.
And I understand media is not for everybody. Trust me, I get it. So, and I get that, but it's nice when you talk to people and they give you an answer and then they give you more of an answer. You're like, oh, this is great. Like, this is awesome. And it's, yeah, those two are two that really stick out to me just because they went a little bit more above and beyond, in the conversations that I've had with them.
Yeah, Cole, I mean, I covered the World Junior Camp in Oakville last December, and Cole was there and, just very delightful with the media. And Quentin Byfield surprised me too. He was also very charismatic, and
Yeah.
I loved his bow ties that he brought out, so that was,
Yeah.
so that
He's
was
got
really
great vibes.
unique.
Yeah.
Very, very good fashion sense. But
Yeah.
you wrote a piece on Kiana Scott, who was named the first female scout in the OHL, and it was a really well written piece that you did. And for me, like it's so important to raise awareness about not only women in hockey but also women of color in hockey, because let's face it, the OHL struggles with diversity and acceptance. So how important is it to raise awareness about these people that are breaking barriers in the sport?
Oh, it's huge. And I don't think they get enough credit, not nearly enough credit. So that's why, finding stories like that is really important. And I wish more people would find stories like that. So I know that is not necessarily going to happen. So I'm always looking to follow people, like follow women in sports, because there's not a lot of us, to be honest. There's more and more each day, but still not a lot. The representation is pretty low, and I'm sure being around the ranks at different events, you see it, right? So it's important to highlight women like that because they're good at what they do. They're great. They're more than qualified, and they're great people. And so, it's great to share those stories and just bring awareness, like you said, to people who might not know and be like, oh, really? She's the first female scout in the OHL? That's really? Like, I was like, really? But then you think about it and you're like, I've never seen a female scout. So yeah, that's true. But it just brings awareness to people. Like I told my parents and they were like, really? The first one? I was like, yeah, in 2020. Can you believe it? Like, yeah. So, I think these stories are really important, and it's important to find these stories and share, what these incredible women have done, because there's so many that you might not know of, and there could be more.
No, absolutely. And I feel like hockey's a sport too that you're seeing a lot more women in hockey media, hockey analytics, hockey scouting. And I feel like the content that they're providing and the insight and perspective that they're providing is actually better than some normal scout. Like it really is. And it's just groundbreaking stuff, but it's important for media to be able to continue to spotlight these success stories and make sure that it's normalized so that, more and more women can be inspired to get involved in hockey and media and that of the sort.
Of course, the goal is always to inspire the next generation, right? You're like, well, we can only do so much now, but we want to make sure that every girl that's in elementary school knows that, hey, if you want to be a hockey scout, you can. Like, that's not a problem. Just because you're a girl, it doesn't matter. Do you know what you're talking about? Are you intelligent? Are you willing to learn? Yeah, great, let's give it a shot. Like you're never limited in what you can do. And I think, you know, more women in sports should be highlighted. I know that there's very like stereotypical roles of that women have in sports. And we're seeing more and more that that's not necessarily the case. Like there's more women in different roles, like scouting. Not a lot of women are in scouting. So we're hoping that, you know, eventually that changes. And we're hoping that, you know, I'm not saying it's going to be a complete 180 because I just don't think that's going to happen, but just more representation, right? And just telling people, hey, you can do it. Like if you want to work at it, you can do it. Just because you're a girl shouldn't mean you're limited.
No, very true. What storyline, Rachel, in the OHL this season were you looking forward to see perhaps come to fruition, but can't now because, of course, the season being canceled due to COVID-19?
Oh, man. Where do I start? Okay, so here's a situation that I was thinking of the other day. So the Ottawa 67s are a phenomenal team. And I think we're all aware that the Ottawa 67s are a phenomenal team. And last year, they were a phenomenal team. And they lost. And everybody thought they were going to win, including me. Because I was interning in Oshawa when they beat us. And we also play Ottawa like 6 times a year. So I'd seen that team play a ton. And I was like, they're probably going to win the whole thing. And then I thought, well, they're probably going to win the Memorial Cup too. And that didn't happen. And this year, they were probably better than they were last year. And again, they're not going to get a chance. So, and I thought it actually would have been really interesting. I was thinking more of an Ottawa-London OHL final. That was kind of my guess. And I actually thought it would have been interesting to see if London could out them and then how that would have played out, because I thought that that would have been a really interesting series. Obviously, we know London is a top-tier organization. So I think that would have been an interesting thing to see how that would have played out. Because so the other thing too is like the whole Western Conference to me was a guess, because they were all like, their gap was like this big in the West, and the gap in the East was this big. So, but anyway, the gap in the West was this big. So I thought it would have been interesting to see, like, I know Kitchener was supposed to match up with Guelph in the first round, and I know Kitchener would have been the 2 seed, I believe, but I think Guelph could have taken that series too, right? So it would have been completely interesting to see how that whole thing would have played out. Potentially could have got a Saginaw Flint series. That would have been really interesting. Actually, another storyline is just Flint as a whole this year. Came out of nowhere. I know it was like only a few years ago there was talk of them losing the team again, that whole situation back in 2015, I think, or 2016 or something. And 5 years later to be here, like, that was incredible to me what they did this year. And just to have a renewed rivalry with Saginaw that hasn't been there. Saginaw's good and Flint's good at the same time. Couldn't even tell you the last time that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, there were many storylines, and Ottawa was certainly fascinating because, like you said, of what they did last year, going to the OHL championship. They were up 2-0 to Guelph, then lose 4 straight. But the team that I thought, you know, perhaps could have maybe upset them was Peterborough. Like, I think Nick Robertson was sensational this year, like just seeing him play, score goals. I know Leaf fans are very excited to perhaps maybe have him being called up to the team for the 2020-2021 season. Hunter Jones in net. I remember speaking with him at the World Junior Camp, and he's like, we're going to take this, Peterborough. And of course, Akil Thomas came to Peterborough as well, who scored the game-winning goal for Canada at the World Juniors. But yeah, I mean, Ottawa, you know, back-to-back years, just bad luck for them, because I feel like you said, they were the team to beat. But I thought maybe Peterborough. I mean, but you know, we'll never know. So I mean, it's always fun to just debate and figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. You never know. That's a good prediction though. Like, I think that could have gone. Well, I just think, you know, last year they swept the whole playoffs until they got to the OHL final. Like, they went 4-0, 4-0, 4-0. So I think that maybe they just wouldn't have gone 4-0.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe they would have had a tougher road, but
you know what I mean? They might have had a bit of a
tougher road would have built them to be successful in the OHL championship. It would have been fun. An Ottawa-London series, 2 of the marquee programs in the OHL go at it. But we'll have to wait till next year. Rachel, I want to finish off with the NHL draft. And I know, again, you follow a lot of prospects, and you and I both watched the NFL draft with great anticipation. And from my opinion, the NFL draft felt incredibly authentic despite its, being, in virtual locations. You got to see, a lot of the families and where they were living and a lot of cool setups from the coaches. Do you think that there are attributes of that draft that the NHL could adapt in order to make the NHL draft successful in a virtual environment?
Well, I think that the NHL is probably looking to do something very similar to what the NFL draft did. And once the NFL released their numbers, that draft was incredibly successful on TV and online on all platforms. It broke records. It had millions upon millions of views. So I think that the NHL would be looking to do something very similar to that, because I think that's the best thing that you can probably do, is to do what they did. Because I think in terms of virtual draft, that's it. That's what you need to be doing. Because from a viewer standpoint, it looked good. I understand the logistics of like the teams. That's probably obviously harder and it's not ideal. And I get that for the behind the scenes. But as a viewer perspective, it looked good. It ran smoothly. It looked clean. You got to see everybody everywhere doing that. So I think it is something that, well, it's going to be online. That's not really up for discussion at this point. I know Elliot Friedman mentioned that on NHL Network yesterday. The draft will be online instead of Montreal, as unfortunate as that is for the players and everybody involved. But I think that the way the NFL did the draft is definitely something the NHL could do, and I think it would look good, and I think it would be successful.
Rachel Halliwell, she is a OHL reporter for the OHL Network. She works at Sportsnet, does a lot of great social media content. Make sure to follow her on Twitter. Rachel, thank you so much for joining the Weesports Quarantine Chronicles today.
Well, thanks for having me, Lucas. It was a lot of fun chatting.